Oh, wait, was I recording the whole time? No. Hello. Welcome to The Honest Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. I'm joined by my co-host for the Road to the Old World show, hashtag Squarebast, Mr. Val Heffelfinger, joining me from the snowy mountains and fractured climbs of Tarani. Hello, Val. How are you?
The smoothest launching show outside of Dallas Fort Worth or wherever the hell SpaceX takes off from. Yes, welcome to Squarebast, everybody.
Get ready to be square bassed up in this. Want to say a special shout out to our 6,000 viewers last week.
Actually, I have that now, but I won't blow your ears out with it.
Do
but
it.
yes.
Do it.
Actually, it was kind of quiet. I lowered my volumes. That was the lamest one yet. Okay.
But anyway, yeah, we want to thank everyone for tuning in last week. I hope you enjoyed the show. I think last week, definitely our disappointment and emotions were on display because we were very excited and still are very excited about the launch of Warhammer the Old World. But last week was a bit of a gut punch emotionally to the community. Not in the way that we thought, though. A lot of people responded in an interesting way, right?
I'd say so. It's funny to me how. So for one thing, I want to clarify. I want to clarify some comments on made by yours truly last week, namely the massive disappointment to do with old models coming back.
Yes.
And I want to be very specific here, and I think we're going to go into the weeds on this today, because we're going to be reviewing the brand new Bretonnian line of models from the year 2004 to 2006. My point, I think the thing I didn't say out loud was specifically the Bretonnians not having an entirely new range is a bit absurd, considering the fact that when this game died, they hadn't had a new model released for over 10 years. So that that to me is a bit of a shitty buzz. And also the stuff that they particularly showed in that preview last week was like their core models. They're Knights of the Realm. They were men at arms. They were the trebuchet. These are things that, like, you would think that if you were refreshing the line, they're going to be the first things that get refreshed. That's been the style GW's been doing lately. Is the core, like you look at the Cadians, the Orcs, the Eldar. In 40K, all of those armies have had their core troops refreshed recently, and to relaunch this game and not have done that for the oldest line that they had of this game at the time when it died, that was my lunchbox letdown. But lots of people out there really pumped to be able to buy the same models they were complaining about almost 10 years ago.
Yeah, I didn't want to out anyone, but I feel like if I'd have just got a couple of the people on Twitter and just scrolled back through their tweets long enough, I'd have found the complaints about those exact same models. But anyway, that's
yeah, right.
That's neither here nor there. I think some people are pumped. I'm still pumped.
Oh yeah.
Mainly because like when we get to what have we been doing in the hobby this section this week, I'll be able to tell you why. But so we're going to talk about those Bretonnian models this week. Talk about it's pretty fun. Also talk about the upcoming rumors for Warhammer Fest, which is pretty exciting because that's not this weekend, it's next weekend, where there will be some old world announcements. It's the Festival of Warhammer. No seminars or studio stuff available though. It's yeah. But yeah, so we're going to be talking about that today, which is pretty exciting. But before we do that, have you done any #Squarebast hobby this week, Mr. Hef?
Holy crap! Yeah, man, I played against. Am I really echoey? I feel like I'm echoey.
No, you're not.
Maybe I'm crazy. Okay, cool. Yeah, this last weekend I got to play against my buddy Tim, who up until that game, actually, I discovered was not a Squarebass listener. And that's kind of how I base my friendships now. Do you give me views on YouTube? If not, you're out. I mean, that's the Squarebass. Anyway, we played. He came over with, he wasn't bringing a face melting list by any stretch. Maybe Chat GPT, which is famous for not wanting to build too competitive of a list for you. Was
Chat GPT obviously a narrative wargamer.
Narrative, very much so. Yeah, you can tell it was trained on the forums of the internet because it knows what cheese is and it's terrified of it. It's funny. So anyway, and I didn't know what I wanted to play, and I saw his Empire army, and I was like, I know what I want to play now: Khorne Demons. And I will say this: Khorne Demons were a lot of fun. to play in this particular circumstance. And also, the first time ever that like the layout of an army book was conducive to just like using the army, because like in the army book for demons, they actually do all the heroes, lords, sort of core, special, and rare in one clump per god. So all the corn guys were in the same 5 pages.
Oh,
So I could
amazing.
literally sit there and just like flip back and forth my 5 pages, and I had essentially everything I needed to play the game, which was striking. I felt it was fantastic. It also helped, that's like 6 or 7 units. But anyway, we had a lovely time. I got to use my new. I finally did the table setup that I've always wanted to do, which is just two folding tables together. I've tried so many different ways to make a home table for myself.
Mm.
So I've got a setup I really like. It's firm, stable. It's got a little
Nice.
room on the edge. Got a little extra room on the edges. I've only ever had tables that were exactly wide enough for the gaming mat. So I feel pretty flush now that I got like 6 inches on either side.
Question for you, because this week I've been printing off movement trays of all things, which is like, I immediately was like, oh my god, this is frustrating, like immediately, because I was like, okay, I'm gonna do 5x2 wide, and then I was like, oh, I really need a 5x3 wide, and I was like, oh no, I'm gonna need like 19 different movement trays for one unit for any configuration I might put it in, and then need that several other times. And I was like, I'd forgotten this horror, and then bang, straight back to having to cut them myself when I was back in the day, score the line and do the fold. At what, I don't remember how expensive they were, but outrageously expensive movement trays those kits were, if I remember.
the old crappy plastic Games
Oh
Workshop
my
ones.
god, yes.
Yeah, I have a big old box of, and then the ones even before those, like, so there's Rob's describing like they were like little custom grids. On one side of the grid was your 25 millimeter large base, and on the other side was your 20 millimeter grid for the small base. So that was kind of neat. And they had like these little plastic side holders. I always found that anyone who used those like did not hobby them at all. So I've just got like a box of like gray plastic, like haphazardly cut out movement trays.
I don't think anyone has ever hobbied them.
They are just the lowest the lowest entry point. I will shout out right now. This is actually one of my biggest, most favoritist things I found in my square-based life, which is a little place called Shogun Miniatures. ShogunMiniatures.com. ShogunMiniatures.com. So I buy a lot of secondhand armies, or at least I have, and a lot of them have, all the ones that like are the nicest and best put together usually have come with these awesome little metal movement trays. And this is a guy who I assume has a like, I don't know, metal bending machine of some kind.
Immediately you were like, actually, I don't know anything about manufacturing.
Some sort of machine with the bending. And they're just flat pieces of steel that have been bent to your dimensions and specifications. They are quite affordable. So like they're not. I don't know if he does this at any particular scale or if he just does it for funsies. I don't know. But this is probably where a lot of I assume he supplies historical wargamers for the most part with their trays, because anyway, that's
so yeah, they're steel movement trays. It looks like he definitely does stuff for what we're all eventually going to become a part of, the historicals.
Hey, as long as it's not trains.
I don't mind. I don't mind. I mean, I feel like Warhammer Fantasy Battle is us basically becoming historical wargamers. Like, I think we're there.
Yeah.
Like, the miniatures help.
It's a step. Yeah. You know what? It's it's history viewed through a more explicit personal bias and prejudice. Boom. Like, that's perfect. So those guys, they have a whole system where they actually have magnetic bases that you can actually get that just stick to the trays, so you can base your guys on magnets rather than gluing magnets to your bases, which I was like, what? That's cool. But I don't know. I don't like the look that much, so I still glue magnets to my bases. But anyway, ShogunMiniatures.com for all your your steel square bass needs.
Well, the other thing that recently was amazed me, just because we're talking about movement trays, and I want to try and find them now. But we did a 3D print show like
Hmm.
review this week, and we were able to check out Highland Miniatures, and
Yes.
their like latest offering is that there's also like a sculpted 3D print base. So I'll just bring it up on the screen. Podcast listeners, I'm describing a movement tray, but because obviously it's done on a 3D printer, it's modular, and all
Yes.
of the elements are on the side of the movement tray, like tie in with the goblins themselves. So
Yeah.
like, I'm a huge fan of this, like absolutely gobsmacking. I'm actually quite excited to see what the 3D community. Like explore a little more what the 3D community has done. Maybe that'll be a fun show that we can do. But this is definitely like a step up, in my personal opinion, for like, which is great. So that's fantastic.
Well, you're
Um,
well versed, I'm sure, into your high fantasy STL suppliers, but I haven't done a good spelunk recently of like quality fantasy miniature STL suppliers.
oh,
But given the old world that we live in now, which is quite literally the old world we used to live in,
mm.
there's a good opportunity to start highlighting some folks. Maybe we could actually do that. Maybe if we have time, maybe we can run down the Bretonnian catalog and then look at some alternative options.
Yeah, sounds like a fun. That sounds like a fun idea, definitely. Hobby played a game, had a good time.
Oh, had a lovely time. It was really, really great. Like Fantasy 2, once you have the models on the table, it does move very quickly. Assuming you kind of have some legitimate rules mastery, because you don't have to move individual models around all the time. And actually, I don't know if you've been following any of the 40K updates, but it sure feels like 40K just added movement trays to their game in the form of making transports useful.
Yeah,
Um, so I was like, it made me realize that, oh, that's why 5th edition 40K was so much faster than every other edition. It was because they had a lot more transports. Everything was mounted up. So you just put down a box instead of you know, 20 dudes, like 20 orcs. If you put one battle wagon down instead of 20 dudes, your game's going to go faster. Same thing applies in Warhammer Fantasy.
yeah. You're only ever making like 5 or 6 movement, but that like movements, but those movements are very specific, right?
Oh yeah,
Like in a game, which is quite interesting. Yeah, like it's kind of fun. I quite like. I sometimes I can get a little bit like I never know where I sit on the micro measuring and things like Age of Sigmar or 40K. Like it's important and it's relevant and it means a lot. Like it's super
yeah.
important, but at the same time, it's actually super frustrating because like you almost in some cases want to be like, yeah, that's fine, right? But then you're like, no, no, it's not fine because if I do that wrong, you legitimately can just say this is how it should work, and I'm like, that's fair, right? So like you're all kind of like a slave to that system in many ways.
So I wonder. So I think in a lot of ways, I think there's always like for I don't know about you, but like when I was growing up, there was this argument about what's a sport and what's a game, and I feel like I'm coming around on an idea of a game is something that has like perfect rules. You know what I mean? Like, and I feel like sports has more fungibility. And I know this sounds insane, but I do feel like tabletop, like in wargames specifically, has a lot of commonality with sports in that regard. In the
Yeah,
sense that in sports, a penalty isn't always a penalty. A goal isn't always a goal. A catch isn't always a catch. Even though it may look that way, there's like a pretty wide band of gray zone. And sports have fallen down the more not fallen down, but as people have tried to perfect the call because we have instant replay and a lot of technology and stuff, and like we have fucking like sonar cameras that can track the ball in space at all time, like in soccer. You know exactly where the ball is and where that line is. It actually robs sports of some of its magic, of some of its like
fungibility.
sportliness.
Mm.
And I think with like war games like this, it'd be great if we always had a referee at the table who could nod whether or not that was onside or offside. But ultimately, like that little give and go is part of what I think of what makes Warhammer really interesting and fun. So yes, it's good to be as specific as you can, but also getting hung up on being perfect kind of takes away some of something.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think a lot of that is always to do with communication on the tabletop. And I say this a lot now. This is kind of my like mantra I live by. You can't communicate enough on the tabletop. That's what I say. You can't ask enough questions and you can't say enough words, which is a little bit daunting if you are more of like a loquacious character or taciturn. Go on, Val.
No, I was just to pick up on that. So being square-bassed and basically living with ghosts, like that's how being into Warhammer Fantasy Battles 8th edition is. I'm literally listening to conversations, reading conversations from almost a decade ago. But it's amazing to me how far we've come. I think in a large part because of the the explosion in competitive tabletop gaming around AOS and 40K. How far we've come at being able to play these games competitively and understanding how there is that need for like declaring things and talking things out, like declared intent and the ability to communicate with your opponent what the game state is as you see it as things are going, so that both of you are calibrated, and how that has become a value or like a core part of how the game is played, as opposed to just be gentlemanly, which is the biggest cop-out bull, or the social contract. We've done a lot of work, I think, as a community, and not work, but like very organically been like, we don't like shitheads who like to gotcha people, who like to just like bust rules out, or like these things that result in wins that are won because someone made a mistake. The classic Tony got Tony'd from 40K years back, where someone placed a
really
miniature.
Happen anymore.
It doesn't. This is my point. It doesn't really happen anymore. And it doesn't happen anymore because of what you just said, which is that we've learned how to play this game competitively by communicating the game state actively and with like very carefully. And both sides of the equation, more or less, especially when you're getting into the higher ends of this game, know that conversation. So it's really cool because when you read the old forums from these days, from this game, you get a lot of that sort of old, feel badsy things. And I think people just didn't really know how to play this, how to sport this, right?
I agree.
People didn't really know how to navigate it. And I think we've actually learned how to do it.
I agree with you. I think that's actually a really solid point, because we're talking also about like the destruction of this being like, I remember way back in the day getting onto Facebook, right? And at that point, I was a nightclub promoter. There were lots and lots of like young people like joining Facebook, and like I was doing club stuff. That was pretty much my like my ecosystem. But then I started to notice just old people I know like were like, yeah, I have Facebook now, and I'm like, why? Like, what are you doing? Like, and then obviously that led to the destruction of several democracies, which was not good.
Oh.
I mean, not full destruction, but you know what I mean. And they weren't just democracies in the first place. #squarebast oligarchies. But the point is that more and more people, like, I remember when I launched Twitch for Games Workshop, there was just like a million voices like, what is that? And I'm like, well, it's the internet. Have you been there? And they're like, no way. No way. I'm talking about like people who I actively knew playing in tournaments, playing at events.
Right.
And I was like, I mean, it's still crazy to this day that we don't have an app. I know that Uncle Atom used to do an app like this, but there isn't a literal like a Tinder or a Grinder for like wargaming. Game4.
I think Game4, I think, is his app. Yep.
But he's shut that down.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But like my point is like, and to back up Val's point, is since Warhammer Fantasy Battle, like we have digitized as a community. We've digitized.
Community.
Yeah, community. We've digitized, and that's great because we are now like the conversation has accelerated very quickly. Like, and then I think what's been able to do is been able to blow a lot of cobwebs out from a bunch of like dark hidey holes where people were like, or people were in communities and they were like, I feel like this guy in my community is a dickhead, but like, I don't really know because I'm in some like rural area or I'm quite disconnected from other people. Then the internet pops up and they're like, by the way, that guy that always does that thing to you is a dickhead, and they're like, I knew it.
So I feel like, so when I first started playing in tournaments, 2015, which is right when Old World ended, I didn't know it at the time, but that's right when this all ended. Like the people who won, for the most part, who always won, were strong personalities. That's what I used to call them. dickheads, assholes, people who could either bamboozle you or were really good at what the ITC termed in the day angle shooting, or like finding way. Basically, they were really good at understanding what you knew and what you didn't know, and then what you didn't know is where they would push the envelope on rules. They would cheat, and so that's what good players were in a big way. And then I think basically the guys who came out in 8th edition when the game got better, a lot better.
8th edition Warhammer Fantasy Battle or 40k?
Good point. 8th edition 40k, coinciding roughly with AOS 2.0. Both games got way better, and then it attracted people who were also like just better at games, and like so you got role models. I think is really the big difference. You got people who were so good at the game, demonstrated skill. That was the other thing. Like when I first started playing, there was 100% a debate over is Warhammer a game that you're actually good at, or is it all luck, or is it just being a shithead, like being more of a shithead than your opponents so that you always win. And then there were people out there who got so good at this game that they like irrefutably demonstrated skill every single time. And the stuff that you mentioned, the fact that communities were talking to each other, the fact that like tournaments were becoming wider, TOs were talking to one another, meant that the light got shown on the darkness, like you said. And on top of that, not only was the bad players were they kind of like named and shamed in a lot of ways, but they couldn't win anymore. This was a big deal because their opponents got too good. And so when they were pulling their shitty moves, they were losing now because the person across the table was like, actually, no, mate, I know my game and you can't do that. And two, people could look to the people now who are winning and I think in a quality way, demonstrating skill. You could also usually get coaching services from these guys too, which I really love because they demonstrate how to play this game well. And I think that happens in AOS. That happened in AOS in a big way, and that happened in 40K. So I'm hopeful for the future of Squarebast events, but I think initially we're going to get a lot of the old school knuckle draggers and mouth breathers.
And guess what? I'm going to those events, and those boys are getting shit mixed. I want you to know, like they are going to get absolutely fucking rickrolled. Like I can't wait, like because they're going to be in a new universe. I'm like, looks like you're cheating, mate, and they'll be like, what? I'm like, you're actively cheating in front of me. I'm just going to go get a judge and tell them that. And they'll be like, no, like, I'm like, no, welcome to the fucking new world. Yeah, like, it's not how this works, right?
Yeah. And,
anyway.
And I think that's really wonderfully cool. And so I'm incredibly pleased, because I think both of us have been active parts of that. And like, certainly I've been here watching as that evolved. Because I would scream from the mountaintops that no, tournaments are amazing. But the reality is at the beginning, the top end of those tournaments were not. Like the top end of tournaments were filled with a lot of real shitty dudes.
But and it's really important
and
to
nowadays
note.
I think that's a lot better.
That's what I was going to say. It's important to note because if you are listening to this and you're like, I'm going to play Old World, I'm excited, but Val and Rob have just described a situation where there might be a bunch of dickheads. We're talking about an isolated few individuals, and those people may return. They may be boogeymen of the past that we're making up that may never be in there. Right, and more than likely, the people that you're going to play are going to be someone new who also just wants to play some tabletop games. So just be really conscious of that. Like, you generally tend to focus on the problems because the problems lead to solutions. Val's a fixer. I would say he's solution orientated as a human being. I like to think I am as well. And so he sees problems so he can fix them. So his brain looks for problems so he can fix problems because he's a good human. And I also like to think I try to do the same thing. So just be real conscious. There's some super nice people out there playing games. And that's the majority. 90+% of those people are fantastic humans. So just wanted to make sure I put that in there.
For sure. Yeah. And I think the difference is in the old days, the shitty humans, they existed for sure, but they would win the events more often than not. Nowadays, I don't think that's true anymore. I think the quality players, people who master skills, the people who know the game the best, they're the ones who win. And maybe that's not. I don't think that is naive. I think that is true. And it's awesome because I think the community has evolved so far from where this game ended. And so when you go back and you see a lot of these people, I think fantasy was maybe the home of that sort of whack player stereotype, that person who was really like anal about stuff and made you feel bad. And 8th edition had a lot of feel bad mechanics built into it. There was just a lot to make it feel like a pretty toxic miasma.
Yeah, especially because
And
there were so many rules. There were so many rules which
just
weren't
powerful
clarified.
mechanics.
Yeah, powerful mechanics and then no
Just powerful
clarity.
mechanics.
Yeah.
So like there's just even just playing the like fantasy just played out of the book. 6 dice skills. Yes, that's right. Fantasy just played out of the book using just things that if you were just playing with, you could just basically drop a nuclear bomb on your opponent, like almost literally, if you're Skaven. And it was, that's not great unless you know it's coming and you know the counterplay, which only exists at very advanced levels, right? So there's just a lot of feel bads. Hopefully that gets removed from the game a bit.
Me too. I hope the same. So I just want to shout out Ebert, in the chat, who's just celebrating a little game tonight. I played a little game. It's with AOS though, but he's been sober for 15 years. That's his celebration. So absolutely fantastic. Yeah. Fuck yes. Proud of you. I'm proud of anyone who's on a journey at home right now or sitting in your pants. That's your journey. That's great. I have done some Square Bast hobby this week. Just so you know.
I didn't even ask you. I apologize. We went off on a long ramble there.
That's okay.
What have you been? What are you square? Where are you square bassing?
Square bassing. As we know, I started producing my Chaos Dwaffos, but with the introduction of the base.
You were talking about Bretonnians. I didn't hear. Well, I heard. So you did more dwarfs or just the bases?
I did. No, I did like 140 dwarfs in 3 days. Like,
God damn.
The production system is on fire. But so well, blunderbusses, sword and shields. I was like, I'm ready. Great weapons. I was like, whatever we need. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't stop. Plus they cheap as shit. So like it was 140 was like £12.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So,
why not? Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you at that point?
Anyway, whose choice were they again? Oh, I used Lost Kingdom minis for their dwarfs. Although I may do some more in the future. But the important point to talk about is I then went on my journey with my #actual Square Bast. So I 3D printed, or I started to get the files for just square bases.
Right.
And so I started printing those out, which is quite fun. Especially fun on like an FDM printer because if you can imagine what a square base looks like, if you flip it upside down,
Hold on, can you spell it out for me?
but they're super easy to print. Is my point. You just flip them up, and then they print out on an FDM printer really nicely. So they've just been chugging away. I think I've probably produced a couple of 125mm bases in the past couple of days, which has been good. But I don't know if I was enraged or I don't know how I felt last week about the Bretonnians, but I was like, fucking no way. So I just started printing myself a Bretonnian army again from Lost Kingdom, and those sculpts are insane, absolutely insane. And just have had the best time printing those out. I printed out a bunch of archers, a bunch of spearmen, and now I'm going through with all of the cavalry. The cavalry takes a little bit longer, but they're very, very fun. And I've printed out. And when we go through the Bretonnian units today, I'll be excited to see which miniatures I think I might be missing. I've done Grail Knights because I assume Grail Knights. I kind of started at Grail Knights, and I've done like a Lord and a Wizard and a BSB. Because I assume that they're going to be, and they're quite fun. Lady Morgana for the Kingdom of Mercia stuff, which is on.
Sexy lady.
Oh, yeah. But she's doing like magic, and she's got like a ruff, and it's like a whole thing. The sculpt is fantastic.
Sorry, I was thinking of the Fey Enchantress. It's just like a naked lady saddle on a Pegasus.
I would print that
it's a classy naked lady on a Pegasus.
Yeah, it's very classy. Yeah, I would print that off, but I think like if I'm going to play in tournaments and we might have some kids playing, I was like, well, I guess I shouldn't.
Dude, you come from a country where like until like 5 minutes ago, the second page of like your biggest newspapers had naked women in them. So like,
yeah, no, I recognize.
I think you guys can handle it.
Oh, I also recognize, yes, I agree with you 100%. Also, like, it's a game where I'm, like, going to absolutely run through some orcs and murder them and, like, stomp on their homes. But if I was to see a titty,
no titties.
No titties, only murder.
Although, granted, if you had a naked sorceress, I think it would only be fair that you also have just some, like, At minimum, your men-at-arms should be hanging dong. They should be Winnie the Pooh men-at-arms. Just have their junk hanging out, so that way the Fey Enchantress, feels comfortable. That she's not the only. It's not like a power dynamic thing. It's just that your particular Bretonians like to get naked.
So apparently, this is an article I read yesterday. Most, not all, but most dongs, to quote you, that we see in films are prosthetics.
Yes. Yeah, prosthetic or full stunt cock. Yeah.
Like, which I like, kind of disappointed me a little bit, just because, like, and I mean this, I understand why, like, it's an invasion of piracy and a bunch of other stuff, but I just think, like, where's the version for, like, ladies? Why aren't they just, like, getting all big, absolute, like you see, like, an actress with absolute mama jammers, and you're like, wow, that's crazy, but they're not.
Well, first of all, the actual genitals, if we can call them those, the genitalia is still pretty rare on the silver screen. I mean, I almost have
the Elbuba or the dong?
Oh, bibs, like the dong. The
going
dong
full dong
is
in a
rare.
Yes, it's a choice.
It's maybe it'll come back a bit more because movies aren't really in the movie theaters anymore, so like they don't have to care as much. But like yeah, I mean, turns out that like there's the reality is altered by film and other forms of print media to give you unrealistic expectations of what the male form or female form looks like. This actually sparks, I believe, it was a novel by the American novelist Ernest Hemingway, and I think it was The Sun Also Rises. And there was a guy who, I think the protagonist in The Sun Also Rises, if I recall correctly, suffered a grievous injury to his cock and balls, I believe the medical term is. And so he was, messed up from that. And his best buddy was obsessed, though, with how tiny his dick was. And I think I'll always remember that the protagonist talking to this other character, I think I remember this right, said, just go look at some old statues. Like, go look at a Roman statue. Like, go down to the British Museum where we stole a bunch of stuff. Or, like, go to, like, I guess they were in Paris. So, like, go to the place where the French stole stuff and put it. The Louvre. There you go. And, like, have a look at those. Have a look at their junk. It's not massive, guys. Like, they're, like, proportionally. Turns out human males, we're more for stow and go travel. We want to fold up easy.
Stow and go travel is such a great. I mean, stow and go travel mode. Leave me alone.
But like, I feel like that's an important thing, like, because kids, love the porn, and it's important to know, like, those are like the elite athletes of penis sizes, and the same thing goes for film penises, which are also figments of our imagination. So
I agree. And also, just remember, and this is important to know as well, that there is no car loud or big enough, no gun big or loud enough, nor a boat loud or big enough that can ever replace the feeling that you feel like you're not getting. So take some time, internalize your feelings. Don't go and buy a big boat or a car and just vroom loudly around city centres. That doesn't achieve anything. Yeah, that doesn't help you. It just lets me know how you feel about yourself, which is not good. Okay,
I mean, it works on a specific subset of as a call and response of of certain groupings. It definitely works on some level. But,
It's like a baboon showing its ass. So, talking
That's
about
a nice
penises.
pink ass.
Talking about penises.
Thanks for that digression.
Well, it was interesting to me because I know William Dafoe had to get a cock double in one of his movies, but that's because it was too big.
Really? He had to tone it down?
Did you not know that? Yeah, he had to tone it down.
I could see an alternate universe where William Dafoe is either actually just a porn star, or it is literally right now a porn star under another name. Like, he's got that porn star face, certainly. And I could see him just like getting lightheaded if he's interested in something. I can see that.
Well, the way this brings us to Bretonnians is a real one. Because Bretonnian peasants don't have. This is the thing that blows my mind a little bit about medieval armor. Is I reckon I'd wear a breastplate or a helmet. But I
Okay.
reckon right up there, and I'm talking like maybe the first thing I think about before a chest piece or a
Uh huh.
helmet
Uh huh.
is a cod piece. I
A
feel
codpiece.
like I know that doesn't seem to be what happened in traditional like kind of medieval times, but I feel like it would be one of the first bits of gear I would want. My personal opinion.
Well, I mean, obviously, codpieces were a thing. Later on, though, actually, like kind of, I think that's more like a pike and shot, like a time period thing. But the funny thing is, they didn't. Was it? I don't feel like it was particularly for safety that the codpiece was innovated. It was more just to give yourself an intimidating and comical phallus shape around
It wasn't it
your
wasn't an
nether
armor
region.
piece. It was more like it was more of a display piece.
It was more of a look at this really ridiculous yellow and red penis thing that I put on myself to very seriously go fight in battles, which is great. I think it's a
No
fantastic
way.
thing that humans did.
That's
You've never seen
amazing.
that? I mean, there are armored versions of it for sure, but like, yeah, the cod piece is
I don't reckon I'm gonna draw attention to it. I reckon I'm putting a codpiece in a ghillie suit. I'm not like writing a bullseye on it. I'm not giving it heraldry. That feels like that's absolutely the wrong. I want less attention to that portion of my body if someone's gonna shoot, not more. Or spear me.
no the original cod piece is really like the first instance of like stuffing gym socks in your underwear. Like it's it's just except for battle. It's funny.
Wow.
I
Okay.
mean, I'm also speaking out of turn because I'm sure there are people who've literally done dissertations and PhDs on the cod piece. So like I'm oversimplifying this. I am 100% sure. But Googling cod pieces luckily has not been turned into a very specific pornography. So that's nice.
So
You can actually just find out about the history of the cod
so
piece by Googling it.
by next week we shall have read and watched several video essays upon the codpiece, and we'll be more informed. I don't want you guys to think that we're not informed enough about this. Okay, so just to finish this off, round it
The
off.
Guardian, the Guardian's got yeah. Henry VIII's armor. I think that I've actually seen this. Sorry, I'm if you can so this. So we got top 10 cod pieces in history. It's at
Oh
the
my
Guardian.
god,
I don't know if you support the Guardian on this channel, but I've put it to you in the WhatsApp chat.
they're okay. They're
There you go.
okay.
This is probably a good
They're not the
aside.
independent.
Not the Independent. Not the Independent. Where's
Although
Robert
obviously,
Fisk these days? Does he still write for anybody?
I don't
He used
know.
to be. I think he used to
Uh,
be Independent. Now he's for the Guardian.
okay, so the Guardian top 10. Who was the top 10 cod pieces? First up, we had.
Oh, he's dead. He died. Oh,
Oh,
awesome.
sorry
Shit.
about that.
Hmm.
Hans Holbein says that it's got to be Henry VIII. That's pretty interesting. He had some wow, a portrait of a halberdier. Yeah, they really
Did you see
they
it?
really went to town on these.
Did you see Henry VIII's armor though? Henry VIII was like the first Chad in like English history, I think.
Was he? I actually will flip the script on that and say he's definitely the first incel in human history. Yeah, like these
Is
women, they won't give me
is
what I want. It can't be me and my incredibly obese
so,
nature.
so as you are well aware, I often, especially around internet culture, I put my foot in my mouth sometimes. But isn't Chad sort of a, somewhat pejorative term? Because that's the way I usually tend to view it. It's kind of like an example of toxic masculinity. Is that not the case, or is it the better forms of
I think
masculinity?
it
Because I
depends on
was
it.
going for toxic male, is what I was going for with the
Oh right,
old Henry VIII.
okay. I think it depends on who's using it, as always. Hashtag square bass. Well, okay, so I printed some Bretonnians out,
Oh right. Oh this.
which
Oh
I'm
shit. This
excited
is us.
about.
This.
That's it.
This
That's
is
all
a.
I got to say. I
This is a
did some
themed
hobby.
podcast.
I
Got
did
it.
some hobby, and maybe next week I'll be sticking my first miniature to a square bass, right? Which the first time when those first square bases came off the printer, I genuinely took like 5 or 10 minutes. I was like, I haven't seen these. I know, obviously, when I was at yours, we played, but I was
Yes.
like, I haven't. I own these
Personally.
now.
Yeah.
This is bonkers. I remember pouring hundreds into bins, like in the past. So that was a kind of moment for me, and a moment that made me be like, "Why are you doing this? Is this the right decision?" Especially when I saw it was all old minis. I was like, "I'm not really sure." So I personally was like, anyway, it was a moment for me. I now have some armies on the go, ready for launch. I'm excited about that. And so, with that said, let's move on to the news. 39 minutes in. Fucking smash that.
I just want to say that was a fantastic 20-minute digression. Perhaps some of our best square bass work on male genitalia. And I think we kept everything above board, oddly enough. Ew.
Yeah, my personal opinion, what size square bast? I went for 25 mils to put some infantry on. I'm not sure what size the Bretonnian cavalry is on. I can't work that out yet.
But we were feeling like my guess is it's not going to be 32 millimeters because that would make sense.
The cavalry?
Yeah. The width on it will not be 32 millimeters. It'll be like 30 or something. So that way it's smaller than the standard large. Because in fantasy you've got like small. Basically you got small infantry and you got large infantry. And in the old game, so you'd have 20 millimeters, and then you would also have a 40 millimeter square, so twice that, and like a little bit longer. 40 millimeter square is where like your large monstrous infantry would usually go onto a 40 millimeter square. So that's like your trolls and this with Bretonnia, Pegasus Knights and stuff like that. But like, so there were a couple different sizes. So there's two base sizes that were basically like just like multiples of 20. And then on the large base infantry size, which was 25 millimeters, you had the 25 millimeter was both large infantry, 25 by 50, so double as long was your cav base, and then you'd have a 50 millimeter square, which would be like either your large cavalry base, your monstrous cavalry base. All those sizes would all be multiples of 25. So you had multiples of 20 and multiples of 25. So the reason I'm saying that is now that we have 25 and question mark, it'll probably be multiples of 25 for the smaller stuff, and then multiples of 30. So like, does that means maybe a chariot base is now 60 by something? That would make sense. Monsters cav, does that go up to 60 or do they keep it at 50? This is where I'm wondering. Do they also jack up stuff that was already close enough? Like monsters cavalry bases, I think that 50 by 75 size already was pretty good. So I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to play older editions. I only want to play the new game. I'm not too interested in that, so that's where I'll be at the forefront of that. That's my goal. So I'll try and work out what they are. I think the cavalry will be 25 by 50, but that would be small cavalry, and then which would be all of your Grail Knights and everything. So I think that's correct. But we'll see. We'll see where we end up. At the minute, I'm still just printing it all out, so I'm going to get it all printed out. I at least know that I can stick the bowmen and the pikemen to the right bases. So I'm pretty comfortable with that. So we'll see what it ends up being, and I think it'll only be a few weeks until we find out all the information. And when I'm at Warhammer Fest, I'm sure I'll be able to find someone I can bully into telling me. Sorry, politely ask, nicely and politely is what I obviously mean. But like, anyway, so that'll be fun. Looking forward to that. Talking about Warhammer Fest, though. We've got an announcement at Warhammer Fest. That's the news. 2 p.m. UK time, Warhammer Fest, in conjunction with the Warhammer Horus Heresy. Unfortunately, we have got some Warhammer: The Old World news. So I assume that this will be we'll see the launch box.
I can't believe I've never put together how close those logos. I've never seen the logos next to each other, and they're mirrors. That's amazing. I've never noticed that.
Yeah. The Horus Heresy and that? Yeah.
That's clearly very intentional design.
Very intentional. I wish I knew someone who worked on that. But yeah, it's very good. But so we're gonna get the news. What news do you think we're gonna see?
Well, I'm hoping we get something substantial. I know we're not gonna get a launch date because they never do that for some reason. But ideally, we'll see a launch box. That'd be really great. Get a good idea of what like the beginning will look like at the very least. That would be lovely. Maybe that's too much to ask for, but if our assumptions are correct and that this is a game launching in the sort of back end of the year, sort of after once the summer's over into the pre-Christmas rush, I'm assuming we're going to see the launch box and the FOMO box, and hopefully some of the stuff that comes with it.
Yeah, I think we'll see the launch box personally. But You never know. Maybe it'll just be like one little preview or something. But I think, after last week, I kind of need to put the question to you: do you think I'm more convinced since last week that the launch box will be old miniatures with upgrade sprues?
I can't believe you're saying that out loud.
I've become more convinced. Not any information I know. I've just become more convinced. I don't know if I'm right. So
like the arms, so the stuff that we've seen, right? People speculated almost immediately that because it was a lot of like sort of hand weapons, so like little battle axes and swords and stuff like that, like armored and heads. So there was a vibe that maybe what we're gonna get are foot knights there, and they talk about foot knights in the last one. So maybe Bretonnian launch box is foot knights and character and grail knights or something like that. So maybe like the grail knights / questing knights. I don't know what you would questing knights, probably not. Grail, I don't know what you combo kit the grail knights with because they are kind of specific.
Yeah, the heraldry and stuff is very specific.
Yeah, and questing knights like carry all their stuff with them, and they got two-handed weapons and things. So yeah, maybe we start going through the catalog and we can think like, is there something that they could be actually providing a new version of in this set? Because like really, the only straw I'm grasping at right now is ideally that it's foot knights and maybe a rebooted one of the sort of special knights. As Knights Errant and Realm, I think Knights of the Realm and Knights Errant, I believe, are the same kit. I think there was a dual kit, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. So we'll just quickly. I'm just showing on the screen here for everyone at home. The weapons, and if you listen to us as a podcast, I'm been describing the weapon upgrades are just they're only arms, only heads, and only shields.
Those are an upgrade kit.
And it could be. I think we only saw this when we saw World Eaters and stuff as well, and Cities of Sigmar. They've only shown off this sort of stuff as well. So maybe we're not. Maybe we're just worrying for no reason, right? So we'll see. We'll see. Anyway, let's go through. We won't know yet. And like last week was one of those situations where, oh god, I've had to click through so many pictures of cod pieces to find the article. Bretonnians. Because I'm still very, very excited. I want you to know. But we will see. We will see. Anyway, so Bretonnians, we're going to go through. We've got a catalogue here of the stuff. We'll talk about what may or may not get new kits, and what we'd like to, and what we potentially like to see. So we're looking at the core battalion box. So if you're new to Warhammer Fantasy Battle and you didn't used to collect the miniatures back in the day, they used to sell these things called battalion boxes. So a starter box.
Your $300 start collecting box.
Yeah, it was your get all of the money box out of someone. And then you got not most of an army, but a significant portion of miniatures to start building an army, right?
When I got my first job in high school, first job in high school, the first thing I ever bought was a PS2.
Nice.
The second thing I bought was an army box for Empire, which I don't think I ever even assigned. I think I kind of stopped playing immediately after that. But I was like, that was maybe the flushest I've ever felt in my life, was being like, how much? Yeah, no problem. Lordy.
They are very, very, very pricey. But in this particular one, you got some of the kits we get to talk about now. So the peasant men and women of Bretonnia our critique of like feudal lordal systems here. The Bretonnian contents contained a Pegasus Knight, 20 men at arms, including a champion, and a big fat friar. Well, sorry, portly. He's jolly friar, who you missed last week.
Is his girth relevant? I'm not sure.
I don't know why I brought it up. He just makes me chuckle.
He's a nice looking guy.
He's a nice looking guy. 16 bowmen, including champion, standard bearer, and musician, and then 8 knights you got in this kit. So I won't body shame the clergy. I apologize.
I mean, if we're gonna body shame something, the clergy,
they're fair game. They're fair game. Right.
I mean,
So,
if you're filling out those robes, you know,
yeah.
you know.
So, what do you think? What do you think? So, let's start with the peasants. Let's start. Let's start at the bottom. Now we're here. The proletariat. How are they
Yes.
going to do? What do you think? Do you think that we are going to see new peasant kits, or do you think that we are going to get ourselves the old peasant kits? And do they stand up to the test of time?
So, if someone shows you who they are, believe them is one of my favorite sayings, and they showed us this exact Men at Arms kit as being relaunched on 25 millimeter basis this time around. So I think we have to trust that, in fact, yes, the old Men at Arms are back. They're back,
Do
and
you, do you,
I
go
love
on.
the design of them. I love the like they're big what are these called? Oh man, these this type of shield has a specific name to it. It's normally used as a anyway, this type of shield has a specific name. I really like it. I love it. It's like an armored shield that's full bodied. um Not really reflected at all in the rules of the day, so that's interesting. I think for their time they're really cool, and because I could never get them, and I've never actually saw, there was never a time where I would have seen these on the shelf because they were obliterated before I was aware that they were cool. They do have a place in my heart, for sure.
Yeah, they're being described as tower shields by the chat. So thanks, chat. Tower shields. I personally think that these kind of stand the test of time. If I'm honest, they're
Hmm.
not. I mean, there are modern versions of these, 3D designers and other stuff, where they're okay. Well, they're better definitely, but I don't think the increase in better is significant. I think that
So
like they're fine.
what you would see, so these guys, I think if you saw a modern version of these, what you would get is what happened to Cadians. You would have these guys be given bodies, so torsos and legs that match their heads and hands. So these are as classically heroic scale as you get.
Mm.
This is a 32 millimeter head and hands on a 28 millimeter body. So this is actually one of the problems is when you, like, for example, if you were to grab one of these guys, Rob, and put them right next door to one of your what do they call them? Leagues of America,
Yeah, the
King,
Kingdom of Mercia.
Kingdoms Mercia. I thought it was Kingdom of America.
No, it's actually a
It's a
legit place
soft C.
in the UK, or one of our older kingdoms, the Kingdom of
Oh,
Mercia.
okay. Well, there you have
Yeah.
it. So like I think if you put them, you'll find that their archers and their men at arms are beautiful, but they're correctly proportioned. So they're about a head taller than these are. And these guys also have that like GW power squat, which was also common for infantry models of its day. I don't really know why they did that, but it is. They almost always sort of had like this like really like down in their haunches pose.
Mm.
So they're even shorter than they actually are too. On top of that, so they're shorter than they should be. So yeah, like your kingdoms of Mercia guys will tower over these dudes. And even if you were to shrink them so that the kingdoms of Mercia dudes were 28 millimeter, so they match their bodies, then you put them next to this and they have tiny hands and tiny heads, because that's what heroic scale is.
Yeah,
The combination
interesting.
of those two things.
Yeah, okay. There's a lot of really interesting stuff in the chat. A lot of people saying they think there's going to be new foot knights or be a new kit, but we'll get on to that in a minute. Eldritch says, I've got a lot of plastics of this generation I was working with recently. The proportions are silly and the mold lines are hardcore, more than you
Yes.
remember.
Oh yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh, absolutely. So these are pre-CAD plastic kits. So this is a multi-part plastic kits, just in the same tradition as the I guess the Night Goblins kit would be the original Cadians kit. Those ones were hand sculpted and then laid out on a sprue. They weren't done on a computer. So the sprues themselves are not fully optimized for where the mold lines hit. And then yeah, they're gonna there's mold lines like probably like right down the middle of the weapons usually, down like some awkward places sometimes on their heads, like they're just like right down the middle of the head, usually side to side. Yeah, it's pretty brutal. So like that's one of the things we were talking about last year. One of the reasons why sometimes I hate these models is that like if you're making these models, they do require, even though they're plastic, they require a lot more skills to get them looking even ready to paint.
Really?
And
Oh,
so they're a
wow.
bit more of a pain in the dick that way. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and also someone has pointed out that the frames for manufacturing these are wildly inefficient in material
Oh
compared
yeah,
to modern
there's
designs.
there's three. There's
Oh,
three.
really?
There's three guys per sprue. So that's why I think you're seeing in the pictures 18 is probably. So I would assume that you've getting what would that be? That's a lot of sprues though. Yeah. So the units were 18 in size. In the old days, you get 15 in a box. Looks like we're getting 18 in a box now.
Wow.
If
Okay.
we assume that's why they were laid out the way they were
In the
on the
pictures.
in the pictures on the preview. Yeah.
That's fair. Okay, so next up, these are, what did you get in this box? You got a unit of knights. So with they just said 8 knights. These weren't. What was the classifications? There were Grail knights. There were
Knights of the Realm. So
Knights
there's
of the
Knights of the
Realm,
Realm. There's Knights
questing
Errant.
knights errant.
So those are your two sort of main knight models. So Knights of the Realm, the original 5th edition ones were in the box. That's your classic Bretonnian knight. Knights Errant are like the young knights, so they're kind of impetuous and like they have I don't think it's frenzy, but anyway, they have to test to restrain themselves because they want to charge in and get glorious honor and stuff.
Mm.
And then outside of that, you also have your questing knights. They're guys out looking for the Grail, I guess. I don't know that much about my Bretonnian lore. And then also you have your Grail knights, and I think that's everybody.
Who've got the Grail? So you kind of feel like the questing knights should just go talk to the Grail knights.
Get the scoop? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, like bro, like hit me up. Like they're at the Bretonnian camp, and they're like, "Hey,"
in their
someone's
defense,
like,
the chat will tell us, but I don't know exactly what the questing knights are questing for. Could be the Grail, could be something else too. Maybe both. I don't know.
I love the idea where they're like, right, I'm going to become a questing knight, and just walk over to the Grail Knight section of the camp and be like, hello, like, can you let me know where the Grail is? And they're like, you have to quest for it. I'm like, what do you think I'm doing? Like, this is the quest. Like, anyway, or there's just an old man in the woods who like has the info, which like thousands of Bretonnian questing knights turn up to every year to just be like, knock on the door, but like, I've heard this is a place. Can you tell me, please?
It's like that. It's like Machu Picchu. I've probably brutally mispronounced that, but you know where like everyone does the same selfie of like themselves alone at the top of the mountain, and then if like you like just reverse the camera, there's just like 1,000 other questing knights like like doing the exact same thing. Like they're all just lined up to try and get their quest checkbox.
So, according to the chat, they were searching for the Grail, but the Wood Elves were just handing them over to those they wanted to give it to. And the End Time story did reveal to us that our Lady of the Lake, it turned out, was a Lariel, that watery tart. So she was. Thank you for that in the chat. Made me laugh.
She was just trolling the Bretonnians in her spare time.
The whole kind of mythos that Bretonnia was built on was some wood elf like fake lore that they built. Like
it's mean. That's
sorry,
mean.
it was Lilith, goddess of the moon. Thank you. So it was like, but it was a wood elf goddess or an elven goddess or something. Yeah, it wasn't Lariel. I remember reading it, and then when they found out, they were like, "Oh my god, you pieces of shit! Oh my god." That's what they said, or something like that, I think. Anyway, so these knights that came in the box are your basic knights, and they don't look awful, if I'm honest. Now I'm seeing them, but I think the paint job is selling it to me quite a bit.
So like I said, the thing is that this got the modern treatment. They would look a lot more like the awesome things you just printed off, basically, and instead they kind of look like old Games Workshop. And moreover, the experience of putting these models together is just not as good as it is now because their process was technologically not nearly as advanced. This was an amazing kit for its day. If they redid this today, it would be a much better experience for a new player. That's my only thinking. So you're just making people have to work for it when, you know, ideally you're making your launch faction frictionless or as frictionless as possible.
Also, like, paint jobs, painting itself, the science of painting these miniatures has come on so significantly. Like the gold on these, or even the silver, like the modern paints, modern techniques, like
contrast would be way up. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just significantly better. So these will just look better anyway.
You'd also have all of these features, so all of the quarter paneling, all of the like symbols on them. Those are decals and freehand. On a modern model, those would be sculpted in so that you would have those details on the model for you, and you would just add color either through slap chopping and contrast, or through other traditional means of painting. On these models, you got to do that yourself, which is why Bretonnians, I think, were not so popular, because they're super hard to make look not complete shit.
That's a good point.
So they tried to smooth that over. Like so far, one of the bigger innovations that they've revealed is you don't have to paint them all differently, because in the old days they're all individual knights with their own individual heraldry. That's what you're seeing here. But now they're saying, oh no, they fight for their I can't remember the Duke or whatever. Like they all fight for their Duke. Yes, it's great innovation. So they can all be painted the same. Well, they're still all painted the same quarter panel with decals or decals, however you want to say it. Like it's they're hard. And I know this sounds mopey and complainy, but if you had trouble selling Bretonnians before, guys, because they were too hard to paint, the stuff that you do these days to make things easier to paint, that's not here at all. You have terrible mold lines. You have basically wide, flat surfaces. You have things that are not common to current model design. Now you have very craggy, sharp features that catch and hold washes and shades and contrast paints. These models with contrast on them will look like garbage.
Yeah, these will look like shit. Although you would be able to like maybe potentially 3D print some like decals and other bits to stick on. But if you're doing that, just print the model, right? Like at that stage. At that stage. Okay, so I like probably we don't see new regular knights. Probably not something we see.
Doesn't feel like it.
Okay.
Unless they were trolling us. Unless they just wanted to show off a fun hobby project, and they didn't say that. But if you read the tone of the last week's article, it's like these are coming back. So that's why they created a new studio army to reflect that.
Yeah, that I agree with that 100%. And then finally, we in the original box, you would get a Pegasus Knight, and I think this guy was metal or fine cast at that stage.
No, they're plastic.
They're plastic.
The Pegasus guys are plastic. Yeah, if you keep scrolling, we'll get into characters, and they'll also have the Pegasus kit later on.
Okay, all right, we'll do that now. Okay, so let's jump to the next page. So Lords and Heroes. So we got Louis Loncoeur, who shouldn't make a return because he isn't alive yet in the timeline we're going to be setting. So we should get a new Lord on either horse or griffin. That should at least be one of the new kits we get.
Yeah, I would assume you're gonna get someone who could easily also be Louis Loncoeur.
Yeah,
who's I can't remember. I forgot the name. Something the Orc Slayer is actually interestingly who the King of Bretonnia is. And it's alluded to on one of the maps that was presented earlier in the trickle of old world information. That's how we've actually come to give an approximate date to when the game is taking place. And of course, this all could have been retconned. Who knows? But we're assuming it's in the era of that particular king. So he's the guy.
So we're gonna get a model for him. So that's exciting. We are gonna get a new miniature as like at least a hero kit, and we might get hero kit on mount, hero kit on foot as well.
Yeah, maybe
for like some generic lord, or you could see that being something that they spend some real time on. My personal opinion. And that will be in the box. I assume the box will be 2 characters and some units versus each other. So like that's what we'll see. So we'll see. I don't even know if we'll see a new Cetra. Actually, thinking about it, like we might see a new Cetra, and then that'll be versus a new one. That'll be quite interesting. I feel like Cetra versus just some random king of Bretonnia is like quite a significant power difference for the box.
Yeah, it's a little lopsided, so maybe you don't see that. But Cetra, I mean, of all the if you're bringing characters back and rebooting guys, like man, there's a lot of opportunity on that. But yeah, think of the scale of how big that model is. Like you can think of like the what's the really big Slanesh chariot? It's on a massive base. It's like basically it's essentially 2 Slanesh chariots merged together.
The exalted chariot.
Yeah, and in these days, in the old game, it came on, I believe it was on the biggest possible base, which is the 150 by 100 millimeter base, and 100 by 150 base, and it's gigantic. So that would be probably the starting point for where Cetra would be, as far as scale is concerned.
Interesting. Okay, and then we've got the Bretonnian battle standard. I don't know if this was in metal or resin at the time. But cool kit. But you assume we're going to get a new one of those as well.
They in those days, I think they kind of viewed Finecast somehow as a feature. So usually they would have like Finecast somewhere on the picture. So I think we can assume that these are metal probably, but I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know how many Bretonians even got reworked into Finecast if they bothered.
Okay. I assume new BSB at least, because metal I think is going to there'll be no metal mini, so either no BSB or a new BSB.
They do made to order. Made to order guys are often pewter, are often in metal, which is interesting. Yeah,
Wow.
like at least I have seen some of them as made in metal. So that's interesting.
I did like, I do like, as being pointed out in the chat, battle standard bearers and magic banners. That's a cool part of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, in my opinion.
Oh yeah. And think of again. But actually, rather than shitting on them, let's look at that model for 1 second. So if we go up a little bit back to the battle standard. So this is something that wasn't always the case, but you can see that battle standard is embossed. So it's actually got the image of that grail on there. You didn't have to paint that yourself. And I don't know about the heraldry on the horse itself, but even on the armor of that knight, there's a lot more embossed details that, I think becomes the way they do things. Like if you look at Leon Cour there, he's got embossed details on all of his heraldry because I guess it's consistent. And maybe that's why they didn't do it, is because they wanted you to be able to put 1,000 different pieces of heraldry on there. Maybe they'll provide. Maybe there'll be like a little plastic punch-out sprue, like they used to do. A lot of shields in these days would have punch-out details that you could put, so that like all of your orc warriors and all of your empire state troop guys, had different embossed textures on their shields and stuff. So maybe we see that as a add-on kit. That'd be cool.
Hashtag
that'd be a good way to solve
it.
Square embossed. Yes. Who else we got here?
We got then we got a generic Bretonnian lord with a great weapon and a Bretonnian lord with a lance. So you assume, again, I assume that if they were to make a general plastic kit for a Bretonnian lord, which I could see, they would make it so that there's a variety of different weapons, arms, head options. So using modern technology, they definitely would be able to craft a pretty exciting sprue for a single Bretonnian lord with a bunch of different weapon options, in my opinion.
Except in the thing that we saw last week, we did see a Bretonnian lord returning, and I don't think it was this guy, the great weapon guy, but it was. It was maybe the Lord with Lance. I don't know. One of them was coming back. Look at the paint job. It's hard to make out, I think, on this, but you can see just a really awesome job done on this Bretonnian Lord with Lance, on the filigree of and the freehand done on the details of the barding on the horse. To me, that's an example of something that, again, that would be actually just a part of the model now. But that's just beautiful freehand here. So Bretonnians are like, to me, I think they're like really in the old days. I think they were a painter's army, because like they really were, because you couldn't really batch paint them. They were each one sort of an individual piece. So they were a great opportunity to do stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree. I like, and they're so like at odds. Like the two different knights are just so at odds with each other, the ones you're looking at, and it's very cool. It's very, very cool, very evocative. I think that's why people are excited about them. Then we got some more lords and heroes. We got a lady on a horse, which I always thought was a terrible sculpt. So damsel with sword and mounted. So just a bunch of different damsels basically on very dodgy looking ponies. These have got
just explosive cleavage, there.
yes. I mean, these are very 80s sculpts, right? These are like, I see you're a lady. You don't want any warmth around the mid of your chest. Yeah,
and like silicone ditties with a push-up bra, just in case. Like these are very pumped up upper torso ladies. But yeah, I don't know. They also aren't like what. What's her name? Morathi? They're not quite Morathi, who is just like a chick off a metal album cover. So, but these are not quite square-bassed female representations, I would say.
No, and I also hope that they get new sculpts, because those definitely showing their age.
Also, regardless, and I think a lot of the square-assed women out there would agree with me. You want to be a little sexy for your sorcerers, right? I mean, it just like doesn't have to be
Yeah, like
gratuitous.
yeah, you like a lot of people crush quite hard on Gandalf. I think,
Right?
like a sorcerer, sorceress, generally magic perceived to give
Hmm.
you kind of like some big sex appeal.
Right?
That's why everyone loved David Blaine. He was a hottie.
That's correct. I mean, wow, what a heartthrob.
What
David Blaine.
a what a but no, that was for a time. If you were going to Vegas, yeah, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, you were seeing Elvis at the height of his fame, and then you were watching like some dudes with two tigers or something. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What the tiger did eat one of them though, so that was unfortunate.
But until then, hottie. And
Super hot.
also, if you're like, hey, I really fancy this guy, and you're like, and we were dating for a bit, we're like, what happened? He was like, he got eaten by his own tiger. Like, your friend would be like, God, that's hot. Like, what a
Pretty
hottie.
hot.
Like, the Tiger King didn't get to bang all of those dudes because of, I mean, the meth helped a lot, but the
The
tigers.
meth was probably a big incentive.
The meth was a big
oh.
incentive, but the tigers also. So what I'm saying is, magic, tigers, meth, all very sexy things, in my opinion.
Square bass. Square bass.
Square bass.
Moving along. Moving along.
Okay, all right. We've got a bunch of different book characters, right?
There you go.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe magic is meth. That's a great point. I hadn't thought about that.
Magic. Meth is magical.
No,
Square bass.
square bass. Anyway,
There is meth in the magic. Magic in the method.
take this small potion, and you'll see things you've never seen. I am a magician. I'll tell thee.
The medium is the meth. The meth is the meth is the medium. The medium is the meth.
Right. Okay.
This is the original Green Knight on screen here, everybody.
The original Green Knight. Awesome sculpt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For its day. Yep.
Yeah. So do you think we're going to see a new Green Knight? Do you think we're going to see a new Fae Enchantress? Quite an important character in Bretonnian lore.
They do refer to the Green Knight. They do refer to the Green Knight. And yeah, so maybe we see a new skull. Maybe we just see this one.
Are you getting more despondent as we go through these? Because you seem despondent at this point.
I'm not despondent. It's just, these are nice for their day. I would love to see what they do with these things now. And by the way, these Grail Knight champions, these are like 4th edition models. These are like ancient. You can see like they're even more derpy in their proportions. Their little stumpy legs. These guys would probably look short next to the men-at-arms we saw, I would bet. So like these are foot knights, and maybe this is the unit that we see rebuilt. So that'd be really cool, because that would be a net new unit.
I think we're definitely going to get like foot knights. I think that makes sense because I think someone in the chat was saying you would have to go back to 1996 to be able to redo those miniatures. I would also like to see new Fae Enchantress, new Green Knight. I feel like but that's a big box. So do you think we'll keep going through them, but I was wondering, do you think the launch box will be some old sculpts, some new sculpts, some upgrade kits, and then we'll see like a new Green Knight mini randomly released on his own? That feels like something they're going to do.
Yeah. That would feel accurate. I just don't want to entertain the idea that there's any old sculpts at all in a friggin' lunchbox, much less 20-year-old ones. Although they've been refloating the dwarves versus elves one has come out, been re-released a few times. No, so the Skaven one. What was the Skaven? Skaven versus High Elves. That's the one.
Island of Blood.
Yeah, Island of Blood has been relaunched a few times. So like, yeah, I mean, some of these models still are core parts of the range. Specifically, these lines though are the thing I have a problem with, is that
because they're so old.
Because they are really so old. They're iconic, but like, okay, so like, give us the updated Terminator version of this. That's what I'm whining about. Because also it'd be easier to build. Here's your core unit, multi-part plastic kit.
Multi-part plastic kit men-at-arms. We think we're going to see them re-released as is. We've already seen them painted up. Empire, so Knights Errant and Knights of the Realm. Same kit. I think it was just the same kit. You just painted it different ways.
No, the Knights Errant are carefree dudes who don't wear helmets.
That's the difference. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So yeah,
Different heads.
very terrible heads as well. So we're going to see those re-released because we've already seen them painted up.
They all look like a young William Dafoe.
So very uncomfortable sat atop that horse.
Yeah,
That's what
just
they are.
fucking squaring themselves each with each gallop. That's why they're so upset. Is because they just keep nutting themselves on their saddle.
Then we're seeing Bretonnia. We're seeing the again core units, the peasant bowmen.
There's a shout out for the for these sort of defense stakes in the chat earlier, and how they were the coolest thing ever to the 11-year-old version of that person. And I agree. First time I saw these, I thought, wow.
Same.
Also, they were pretty cool in game too. They gave. I can't remember exactly the mechanic, but it wasn't nothing. It was.
Yeah,
it was pretty cool. Like,
I also
you didn't want to
thought they were
charge
cool
these
as
guys
well.
from the front. Yeah.
Yeah. The other only cool thing from Old World that I super loved was the donkey cart that you got for the dwarfs.
Yes, the pony cart. Yeah.
The pony cart was very good.
The
Right.
thing about it is, like, you were a dwarf player in those days. You were just so triggered and teased by that pony cart because you're like, do we get pony cavalry? No, you don't get. You do not get pony cavalry.
You also get 900 of those pony carts, like as spare bits.
Yes.
Like
I've literally thrown them in the garbage.
Yeah,
I've literally thrown them in the
hundreds
trash.
of pony. You could have made a pony cart army unnecessarily.
Yes,
Yeah.
easily.
Okay, so then we got special units. So don't forget Lord's Heroes Special Core and Rare. So special units. So Pegasus Knights.
Mm-hmm.
Pegasus Knights were plastic kits towards the end of
were.
8th edition. You think these are going to just get released as is as plastic
We've already
kits
seen
again?
them. I think we've already seen them.
That is heartbreaking. I'm not going to lie, because those Pegasus are derpy.
Yeah, this is not. I mean, first of all, he's at least he's Angron jacked. Like, that's nice. Like, you've got some biceps there, which is cool because the Pegasus, actual like Pegasi, like on independent characters in Empire, are actually like, they don't mess around, man. They're like strength 4. They got 2 attacks. Like, they're pretty dope. They do some extra chip damage. That's nice. But yeah, the thing that I wonder about these particular models is that, say this model was released a little bit later, say if this was released in 7th edition, it's probably on a monstrous cavalry base, so it's probably on, say, a 50 millimeter base. Whereas this is a 40 millimeter base, which made it a real pain in the dick because usually you had 3 of these guys. Their wings are wider than the gap between them when they're in skirmish formation, which means they were just such a shitty thing to try and rank up. I'm hoping that base goes at least to 50 millimeters. That would make these guys a lot more easy to manage on the tabletop.
I think that makes a lot of sense that they're going to do that anyway. It'll be quite interesting. It's like, do we? Oh, I guess we don't know, but our assumption is the one in the article from last week don't even look square.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I was trying to find the article from last week.
No. What is in? They might be. They won't be round. Wait, can we like?
I'm going.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh, rectangle.
No, they're square. They're square.
Okay, they might be rectangular. Okay, they are square.
They could, like I said, so a monstrous cavalry base, because these guys also, I don't think monstrous cav existed when these were released, so they aren't monstrous cav. But these look like they might be longer than they are wide.
They might be rectangular.
They might be. Could be.
Could be.
Okay. But yeah, these are the exact same kit for sure.
So next unit are questing knights. So I like questing knights. I like the story of questing knights, and the bit that you just described. They are an incredibly over-designed kit in many ways. They're knights who are out there looking for the realms. Oh, I've accidentally clicked that bigger, which that actually works quite nice.
Yeah.
But you can see they've got all these additional elements. I honestly, this is the bit, like, so these are the kit that I printed out first. I've done Grail Knights and I've done these. And I'm just obsessed with these kits, especially the ones from Lost Kingdom, just because they've got so many bits on them, like potion pots, and like these guys got a chest of drawers, and it feels like you at least get some of that fantasy-esque whimsy, a bit Don Quixote. Which is fun.
Exactly. Yeah, Tilting their windmills. These guys, I remember them a lot from when they came out when I was a little kid in White Dwarf. and they are really cool. I think these are like really awesome examples of like Citadel minis, and I think they remain so to this day. And again, this is something. Again, all those details, all those bits, this would paint up real nice in a slap chop way. Problem with these fellas, they're absolute garbage on the tabletop in 8th edition, and I'm not sure if they ever had a day in the sun.
Oh no.
The fact that because they're great weapon or great sword cavalry, so they strike. They even in earlier editions they would in old editions if you charge you got to go first. If you're carrying a heavy weapon or a great weapon, I'm pretty sure you struck last. So kind of eliminated the benefits of being on a horse. So yeah, maybe hopefully they get better rules going forward in the future.
Okay, yeah, I would like to see. I would like to see these redesigned. But anyway, we'll see.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, it would be cool if you had like a Grail Knight and Questing Knight combo kit, but to me, it's kind of hard to do. They're very different in
Because of the
aesthetic
horses, right?
well, not just the horses are the thing that's the same, obviously, between those two kits. The dudes themselves are very different.
I
Like
feel like
a lot of these guys are not helmeted. They're two armed. I don't know. Might be hard. And they have those giant backpacks, all the stuff on them.
Yeah, one of them is carrying coconuts, which is obviously fantastic throwback.
Where? Who's the coconut
says,
guy?
Someone says that
No,
they've
it's
got
the loot.
coconuts.
It's the guy with the loot is also that's part of Brave Sir Robin. I think is the
Yeah,
guy.
yeah,
Oh.
yeah. And then we've got the mounted yeoman or the
Yep.
povos on a horse.
Yep. These are very important. And they have bows too. So this is a really important little piece of skirmishing fast cav. These horses are absolutely tiny. These are the very old unbarded horses. This is a unit we didn't see previewed. So maybe we see some new yeomen. That'd be cool.
Okay, all right. Yeah, maybe new yeoman. Maybe new yeoman. It feels weird
That'd be a
the
fun
unit.
inversion. It's like, hey, you love Bretonnians? Well, we're gonna give you knights without horses and peasants with horses. How about that, guys?
I was just thinking, this is the one thing I don't want. I'm like, you can just delete these. I don't care. Like,
I
get
heard you
rid.
love knights on horseback. Well, what about knights on foot and then poor guys on horseback, huh?
Just like I don't want these absolute derps. Anyway.
All right, what else we got? We got 3 minutes to wrap up the rest of this range.
Okay. All right, let's go. We've got.
I think we can do it.
Okay,
Oh,
we've got
this is a
Grail
great one. This is a
Reliquary
great
and
one,
Battle
yeah.
Pilgrims.
Yes, I mean this again. Like think of the Sisters of Battle Reliquary, right? And imagine what this would be now. Like so incredible. So this is one that would be just so phenomenal to see redone, and the guys in it too. Like even this, like you take the Empire flagellants, and you could whip together a really cool reliquary using sort of old but new models.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I agree. Like I didn't quite like I haven't printed the one or even attempted to print the one from Lost Kingdom because I was just like, that's a lot. Like that's a
I can't think of it. So yeah, we'll have to talk about
like,
alternates next week.
Yeah, but like looking at this kit, it's just a lot as well. Like it's a ton of models for but it's like the Triumph and St. Catherine. That's good. Okay, onto rare units.
Yep.
Onto rare units, and oh boy, these do not stand the test of time. Grail Knights. These are. I've been looking at much better modern sculpts, and these ones. I hope they get re-released. This feels like if I'm re-releasing a unit, it's Grail Knights. You want the best ones to have a new kit, right? But I don't know. What do you think?
I think that it's hard when you're scanning a tabletop for different for knights. Like I bought a whole group of, like I said, I bought a painted army of Bretonnians, and I struggled to figure out which ones were Grail Knights, and they're supposed to be like the like marquee elite heavy cav that they have, and so yeah, if anyone gets an update, these guys, because they're not even these sculpts go back way back. Way back.
So these are the ones we haven't
these are like
seen.
the fourth or fifth.
We haven't
we
seen
have
these, and I absolutely think these are the ones that we'll get. But because you at least get like the unit for the faction. Like if you're going to think of something, I think you think of that. The one we have seen is the trebuchet.
I can't believe it. I mean, I like this a lot. I think it's a great piece. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's. And I mean, it's a trebuchet, right? It's pretty basic, but it's got like The new ones would be just big. Like think of the Skaven catapult and the scale and dimension of that, which is a plastic kit. That's what you would see if you had a modern trebuchet. It would be properly scaled to be a trebuchet. This is like a little pea shooter trebuchet.
Yeah.
But it's cool. At the very least, I think it's cool. I got 2 of these too. They're really awesome.
The wheelbarrow guy is giving me life. I can't believe they're
Is he
selling that.
is he playing it? Is he playing a violin? What's he doing?
I think isn't he firing like a little slingshot or something? I don't know.
Yeah, not sure. I'd have to go. I'm gonna go have a look.
And then that's it. So that's the range. That's everything. We've covered it. We've been through the list. So and now, based off our convo last week, I'm feeling a little bit more confident. Mounted knights, maybe some Grail knights, maybe some new lords and characters. Feel a bit more positive.
There's room in the range, and also here's another thing that they could be doing. They could be only bringing net new models to the lunchbox.
That's true.
That could be something, right? Or models that are so old that they know people will want to replace them. So things like the Grail Knights, if they make a really modern, awesome looking Grail Knight kit, think the different, like the old blood, like they're so old that they're not even cool old. So like the old Blood Knights for Vampire Counts / Soulblight Gravelords, that got updated and it went from an amazing kit to an amazing kit. Very similar in style, just updated and really awesome. So there you go, guys.
Yeah, pretty good. I hope everyone enjoyed that. Thanks very much.
Wow.
The chat. Thanks, Val. Thank you. #SwearBast.
All right. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, everyone. Tune in next week, Thursday, 11 a.m. GMT, for more episodes of SquareBast, your hottest and most up-to-date relevant Old World Total War Warhammer show. Please do join us. Thank you to everyone, and thank you for being #SquareBast.